Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the Hearthstone Inquirer, your one-stop for Hearthstone news and rumors, community spotlight, and the deck of the week. My name is Striketh and I'll be your host. This week in the news, our topics include the first two wings of Naxxramas being released, this week's community tournaments, and the changes to the Eaglehorn bow. Last week, the first wing of Naxxramas, the Arachnid Quarter, was released. This was met with overall joy from new and old players alike with the infusion of new cards and a challenging heroic mode. This week, the play quarter comes with cards like Unstable Ghoul, Sludge Belcher, and Loethap being released. These are the cards that the masses are generally most excited for, and it'll be interesting to see how the addition of these new cards continues to shake up the meta. With the release of the new cards from the Arachnid Quarter, we've already seen a shift in deck builds and gameplay styles. The addition of more death rattles to the game from cards like the Nerubian Egg and the Haunted Creeper have diminished the power of AoE abilities and made silencers and combo cards more prevalent in the metagame. The bosses in the play quarter have some very fun and interesting mechanics, including a new addition which nullifies Alexstrasza. If you attempt to utilize Alexstrasza, the AI opponent will just laugh at you and destroy the card. This is a nice change as it forces players to create skillful decks to counter each boss instead of cheesing their way through the heroic mode. My prediction for this week is a strong showing of Loethap in many decks as people continue to try and counter some of the more difficult decks to deal with, such as Miracle Rogue and Freeze Mage. Unfortunately, I feel that this is only going to lead to the obvious counter of running more aggro-oriented decks that don't really rely on spells. While Loethap won't be as game-changing as many are giving it credit for, it will certainly cause a shift in the overall playstyle on the ladder. What decks will come out of the darkness and into the light at the end of the week? Only time can tell. Next up, the community tournaments of the week ranging from today, July 30th, to Sunday, August 3rd. Each of these tournaments has the potential to win you a seat at your region's championship qualifier tournament for an invite to BlizzCon, so if you're looking to get into the competitive scene, then this is your ticket. This week's tournaments are as follows. Today, July 30th, the Soulfire Wednesday Cup. This takes place at 5 p.m. Central / 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and can be signed up for on the Xfire website. Saturday, August 2nd, the Zotac Hearthstone NA and EU Cups, which start at 2 p.m. Pacific and 1400 CEST accordingly. The Soulfire Saturday Cup also takes place on this day, starting at 2 p.m. Central / 3 p.m. Eastern, and if that wasn't enough for you, there's also the Top Deck EU Tournament starting at 1 p.m. UTC-4. Lastly, on Sunday, August 3rd, the National ESL Preseason Cup takes place at 6 p.m. Eastern for North American residents, and the TT Esports Summer Challenge Cup takes place at 1600 CEST. Links to each of these tournaments can be found in the description below, so you can easily find and sign up for them. And finally, with the release of Naxxramas, Blizzard made a fairly large change to the Eaglehorn bow, which caused a bit of controversy. I wanted to briefly talk about this here as it's an interesting change. Prior to Naxxramas, the Eaglehorn bow would always gain an additional charge whenever any secret on the board was revealed. With the addition of new secrets in Naxxramas, Blizzard opted to change this to only getting a charge when the hunter's own secrets were revealed instead. As this is basically a nerf, they've also allowed owners of the Eaglehorn bow to disenchant it for the full crafting cost for a limited time. This part is important. If you're unhappy with the Eaglehorn bow now, with these changes, you only have until August 6th to disenchant it. Blizzard was very explicit that this must be done before August 7th and not on August 7th. Otherwise, after that time it'll revert back to normal and disenchanting the bow will get you the standard reduced amount of dust. While some people were up in arms over this change, I feel that it was a very good move on their part. While the Eaglehorn bow isn't as strong now, it'll at least encourage people to actually try out the new secrets. Otherwise, if left as is, you would likely see a sudden increase in hunters who would quite enjoy the nearly infinite charges on their Eaglehorn bows as paladins and mages tried out their new secret decks. Balance is key, and I feel that Blizzard made a great decision here in resolving this issue before it actually impacted players on the ladder. And that's it for this week's news. Now onto the community spotlight for this week. The Hearthstone community is full of many individuals whom help form a whole. These unsung heroes don't generally get the spotlight they deserve, and many live in obscurity while continuing to toil away. This week, we're taking a look at Zealot, who is primarily a priest player on the European server. For the longest time, people have looked down on the priest class, saying that it's not viable in the current meta, it's too slow, there's too many problems with the cards to prevent it from being competitive. Many of these opinions are correct, and yet, against all odds, Zealot continues to play priest and has become known as one of the best players of the class in Hearthstone. He not only shows an expertise with the class that few others have, but he consistently makes legend each season playing only priest in the ladder. Zealot's roots can be found in games like Bloodline Champions, where his team defeated Team Dignitas in the Beyond Gaming qualifiers in World of Warcraft. Originating from Poland at 19 years of age, he streams on almost daily basis on twitch.tv/Zealot, and consistently shows not only his excellent skill with the priest class, but also his ability to explain each of his plays in a way that is easy to follow for players interested in learning how to play a priest. He updates his deck daily, and it's always interesting to stop by his stream to see what he's experimenting with. Whether it be a more control-oriented priest, or just playing around with shadow form, there's always something new and fun going on. He has a relatively small following currently, but it seems to grow daily, and I highly recommend you give him a follow and stop by to check him out when he's online. Check out the annotation here in the video or the description below this video for a link to his Twitch stream. And now, onto the deck of the week. In the current meta, you often hear complaints about stale decks and boring games. Well, this week I bring you a deck that's anything but. This deck is by a user named Spartacus, and it's nicknamed the Doomsday Warlock for a reason. I know what you're thinking right now. With the latter dominated by Zoolocks and Handlocks, how could this possibly be different or fun? Well, watch and see. The idea behind this deck isn't necessarily a new one. In fact, we're taking a bit of a blast of the past with the inclusion of Jiraxes. However, it's been given a new coat of paint with some Nerubian eggs, and the deck synergy is very real. The idea behind this deck is to establish early game board presence while maintaining control of the board with your spells. Like most other Warlock decks, you must be willing to sacrifice your HP pool in order to consistently win games, but there are enough heals in the deck to keep you topped off. What makes this deck fun is how many ways there are to pop the eggs. 2 eggs in a Void Terror gives you a 3/7 and 2 4/4s for a total of 7 mana, and can drastically swing the game in your favor. Or, pop a Power Overwhelming onto the egg and get double the value when the egg dies at the end of your turn and becomes a 4/4. And, should you get to the late game with this deck, Jiraxes and the Dread Infernals provide you with a very strong board presence that can be difficult to overcome for your opponents. Sylvanas is also a great addition, as comboing her with a Shadow Flame can board clear and still use something fun from your enemy, a Maz style. Some may question the addition of Twisting Nether, and while it's definitely an expensive card at 8 mana, it's yet another way to pop the eggs and regain board control late game. If your opponent slams a bunch of creatures onto the board, you not only get rid of them, but you still have up to 8 damage on your side of the board left over, which will put you way ahead of them in board presence. Now, this deck uses some atypical cards and combinations not often seen, so it does take some getting used to. You'll likely need to practice with it for about 5 to 10 games before you get the hang of how everything works, what you should and shouldn't mulligan, and so on. It generally works well against Zoolock as long as you're able to establish an early board presence and you optimize your spell usage according to what they have on the board. This deck does generally need some time to ramp up, however, so it can suffer against aggro decks. Slower decks that go into late game are heavily to your advantage. Overall, while I don't necessarily see this deck getting you to Legend, it is certainly fun to play. If you're tired of the standard decks that everyone plays on the ladder, toss this one into your deck list and give it a whirl. I guarantee you'll have a good time, and you'll be impressed with some of the crazy combos it allows you to pull off. The link to this deck can be found in the description beneath this video if you're interested in checking it out. And that's it for the first episode of the Hearthstone Inquirer. If you liked the video, please let me know by clicking the like button below. Otherwise, if you disliked it, please click the dislike button and let me know why in the comment section. Your feedback is always appreciated. Also, should you have any nominations for the Community Spotlight or Deck of the Week sections, please let me know and I'll take them into consideration for the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Striketh, checking out.